Hello everyone, Jonathan Master, and welcome to our webinar. While you've been waiting, see the results of our customers who've streamlined their budgets and forecasts. So we've got a couple of people running today's session. Myself, Jonathan, and I've got Rebecca. Now we're in either offices in different states. We're going to play a bit of tag team, and we're going to go back and forward, share some examples, talk about some topics. So I hope basically we don't cut each other up and deliver a good message today. So both Rebecca and I have been, I suppose, part of enabling organisations improve around areas such as budgeting and business intelligence within the organisation. And if you've ever come to one of the previous events, you might have basically met us, maybe heard us talk, or we've shared a coffee. So before we get started, just a few house rules. First of all, questions. You can ask, we've muted everyone, but you can ask as many questions as you want. Basically, there's a little questions box, and we're going to sort of dedicate as many minutes as we can at the end of the session to answer these. So as you go along, please don't hesitate to just ask away. We're also recording the session, so we'll put that on our YouTube channel. And like I said, you can kind of browse, look at this, distribute it as you want. And any of the case studies that we've referenced today are all available material basically on our website, or we can send them out by request. So the theme for today's webinar is while you've been waiting. So the question, I suppose, is waiting since what and when? Well, the invite for this webinar went to all those who previously attended any of our previous events over the years with us, Professional Advantage, on the topic of improving, streamlining budgeting and forecasting. So I want to just ask a question. I'm going to sort of answer the question as well for you. But guess how many organisations have actually, across the Eastern Seaboard, have actually been to some of these events held probably over the last 5 years? It's actually 551, precisely. So today's webinar is to talk about the organisations who took inspiration from those events and actually did something. About what PA did to enable that transformation and put them into a stratosphere of improved performance. So I just want to quickly remind you about some of the events that we did run.
Thanks, Jonathan, and welcome everyone today. Jonathan introduced me before. I'm Rebecca. So just a quick reminder, PA shared the stage with a number of different thought leaders with the different events we've run and potentially the ones that you've attended. Firstly, David Parmenter. Now, David is the author of many books, and I won't read them all out to you today, but he's essentially known as the king of KPIs and is one of, I guess, the leading evangelists around the concepts and introduction of rolling forecasts. We also themed a series of events called Winning CFOs. And now this was a 4-part series on how you can improve the effectiveness of your performance measures and improve the leanness of your accounting function. And during these events we also demonstrated the technology, referenced examples and different case studies about our experience in implementing the rolling forecast solutions.
And recently, in the last few years, we've worked with Chris Caton. So Chris Caton is an author of Premiership Business, leading light on topics such as best practice budgeting, moving beyond budgeting and business modelling. And the theme of this series that we shared a platform was streamlining budgeting processes. We ran these annually, and indeed we actually have some coming up. So please feel free to join us at the events, basically interstate, Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. You can see the dates there, 22nd, 23rd and 24th of June. So we run these events annually and we share basically his thoughts and leadership, and we share that platform demonstrating how the technology, again, delivers the streamlining, talk about case studies and references. So today's invite went to everyone who's potentially attended these events in the past. It might be someone else within your organisation, but we thought we'd probably bring everybody together to ask, what did certain businesses do as a result, basically, of the compelling arguments made within those sessions?
Actually, if you come along to, or you've been to one of Chris's events, or you come along to the one that's upcoming, you'll see, and I love this particular analogy Chris uses around the concept of a set play for finance. So it's about how to set up a process that finance sets up, they run and control the effectiveness of that. So essentially, if you're a soccer fan, the finance team is the penalty taker, so that they know exactly what they need to do when and what the outcome is going to be for their planning process.
And in Chris's words, it's a great chance for finance to kick goals on a field of play that it sets up. That's important. So budgeting and forecasting, unlike most other things, it's not a response to something we don't plan for. So it's the biggest opportunity for the finance team to demonstrate to the rest of the organisation that it is effective. So if it's a set play, why is budgeting so painful? I often liken it to kind of the orienteering experiences I used to have in the UK, climbing through the fog and the mist, losing sight of my team. Real endurance, look, I used to get a real kick out of it. I don't necessarily see a lot of organisations getting a kick out of the budgeting experience if it's a bit like that within their own organisations. And often it's a disabling, basically, unempowering event for most organisations. And look, I have to say the key culprit and the predominant culprit is nearly always Excel. It's not always Excel, but nearly always. Now, I don't have too much time today, and we want to go through case studies and tell you stories today to go through why Excel is not a good tool for instance, budgeting and forecasting. But we get our biggest wins, okay, from its replacement. So some of the impacts that we're going to discuss today have come through its replacement. It provides the biggest wins. From version management, fragile logic, weak process management, all really are very fertile ground for very quick and transformational wins. And I kind of throw down the challenge to anyone to demonstrate differently. I'd be happy if maybe you question, we can follow up this particular thing, I'll come, you show me how Excel can effectively demonstrate against these organizational processes.
Look, there are many surveys that point to, I guess, the impact of poor budgeting for many organisations. This particular one, the results are up here on the slide here, is called the Hackett survey, and it is typical of other surveys, but it's also typical of what we see and how we, I guess, the as-is that we take our customers from. So if we work through this and have a think about it, 49% of the budgeting processes are taking too long. And I guess have a think about how these numbers relate to your organisation as I run through them. 26% of them are outdated by the time they're finalised. That would indicate to me that potentially therefore they're not active business tools that are used beyond the formalised, finalised process of the budget. And on average, the business will take around 95 days of effort across a 3+ month period of time to complete the budgeting cycle. So if that relates to your organisation, there's certainly ways that we can help you improve that, and certainly the case studies we're going to be talking about today talk to that.
And you've got to ask yourself if you've got those statistics or even an improvement on that. Even if your budgeting is just taking over, a month, how are you going to move to rolling forecasts? So these are real impediments to improvement. So what we PA does, I suppose, is help businesses meet these challenges. That's our role as a facilitator. We enable improvement through technology. So many, this particular event, have used this event or the previous events as a catalyst, and we've engaged and delivered a streamlined planning process. And we're going to tell some of those stories in a second. So this is businesses where people budget happily, actively participate, own and drive their plan. And we've delivered concepts like rolling forecasts, driver-based planning, and enabled strong commercial management. And we do that with two technologies, the Infor and the Board CPM platforms. Now, statistically, given the impact of that technology, I am confident that we can point to productivity gains in the order of 90%. And that's quantifiable, it's measurable, and we can go back to any of our particular case studies and we can point to this. Now, how do I do that? Now, when you can roll a plan basically in seconds and minutes, when you can collect and aggregate data or results immediately, when you can incorporate comparative data seamlessly, if you just think about the impact basically of that on a budgeting cycle, do you think about the impact basically on the time saved? It's very easy to quantify a statistic such as 90% productivity gains when you think in terms like that. So with that in mind, let's take our first story. Let's take Scania. So Scania is an international truck company. You might recognize the emblem basically on the trucks and buses and coaches that you see on the road. Within Australia, Scania is headquartered in Victoria, employs 380 people, has 11 branches. It runs a parts service and 24-hour road test systems and a nationwide network dealer network. Now, they quantified the improvements of moving off Excel very exactly in their case study. So just rolling a new year used to take them over 2 days. Okay, now that's actually quite a small amount of time. Some organisations I've seen take far longer. That's just actually creating the template basically for the new year. New versions now take 15 minutes. Okay, that's including some adjustments to assumption settings and some a review. What if bottom-up and top-down scenarios are now possible on the fly? It used to take 19 days to prepare a budget report and 3 people 3 days just to populate the final budget comparatives into their management reporting. This process is now finalised and reviewed within minutes. So they now have a self-service culture. And
further to that, I mean, that there are significant wins around Scania's planning process and have made a massive difference to the decisions they're making from the organisation. But I guess as a fallout of all that work we've done, the management of Scania now has access to a vast array of information that they didn't have previously. And so they've got the ability to do things like compare data from different parts of the business. It's become far easier for managers to analyse labour efficiencies, profit on margin, expenses, and compare performance across different branches. If you think about the type of organisation they are and what they're doing in terms of their workshops and production workshops, things like labour efficiency and things like costs are significant impacts on their bottom line. So this visibility they've gotten from this, what was initially a planning project, has been significant wins for not just finance function but operationally as well. The solutions we deliver and what Scania aligns with is that there's a very significant, important, but I guess not so secret weapon about how they're achieving this. They're achieving it because they, the technologies, and in Scania's case it's Infor BI, are technologies that allow you to budget or plan, monitor and analyse performance within one unified single integrated environment. That allows for that intelligent, analytical and commercially focused planning and budgets and forecasts and reporting. And that's the key thing, is it's one unified place in order to complete all these different tasks. It's not different modules, it's not different pieces of technology, it's all in one place. It all goes hand in hand with one another.
So this allows a business to tackle kind of like a whole range of different planning, reporting and BI related sort of improvements at a time, at a pace right for it, and in the same platform. So let's take Sydney Opera House, a very recent case study. Virtually all the problems experienced at Sydney Opera House are a result of using Excel. Budgeting was a fundamental priority. It was imposing a massive overhead on staff, and the business analysts used, basically really managing the process, doing their reconciliations, never really having time to really actually add value to the business support role they did. So we completed a budgeting improvement with big gains quite rapidly, And then from there we tackled the next biggest thing, which was the Sydney Opera House Presents program book, which they called Ethel. Now this was another business critical system, a fragile Excel-based system, which basically handled the financial management of some 800 performances across 10 programming streams, with some associated expenditure around 28 million. So basically every Sydney Opera House Presents event was run out of an Excel workbook, which managed the initial sort of forecast budget for that specific event right away, and they basically managed and controlled the expenditure and revenues all the way through the event life cycle, and then they consolidated that in a massive workbook called Ethel. So we took that and digitized it, and then we seeded that information into their budgeting process and made it an even bigger transformational win for the business. So in their own words, they now have a single quality source of truth, improved master data and data integrity, and that's given the Opera House management and staff greater confidence, basically, in budgets and forecasts. Forecasts are now available real time. That's a huge improvement. And in fact, Sydney Opera House have now started talking about moving the organisation to this new cultural place of rolling forecasts, which is a big step for the organisation. So reporting limitations have overcome. You know, you can now kind of report over multiple years, and finance staff have time to do their value-added analysis.
And I love the Sydney Opera House story because they're really on a journey with this technology. They're really viewing it as a strategic platform that's continually evolving and addressing different stakeholders and different needs across the organisation. So that since what Jonathan spoke about, they've gone on to add expenditure tracking and analytics over many areas of the business, such as marketing and building maintenance. And it just gives so much more visibility and traction to the decisions that people like building maintenance make in terms of work they're going to produce and marketing activities, analytics over that to see how effective they are in terms of driving future business.
So here's another statistic I'm confident on that we can be examined and questioned on. I am confident that we can point to a shift in a transfer of time in organisations through the use of technology and the implementation experience that we've had, removing organisations to spending 70% plus on administering and managing and maintaining and reconciling, holding effectively systems together as efficiently as they can given the technology they're using, and removing the late night reconciliations and all the rest of it, to switching that around and turning that ratio on its head and giving people 70% of effort now directed to value-added analysis. Now, just think about the impact within a business. I think that's that measure basically has even been exceeded in cases. So what about driver-based planning? So let's just take an example of that. Here's a nice case in hand, and it gives you some idea as well that we really don't mind. It's not sector specific, it's not vertical specific, it doesn't matter what systems and what processes you've got. The improvements basically go across all sectors or geographies. So this is a very different example to the one that we just talked about. It's an organisation called Spirits Platform. They provide Australian sales, marketing, distribution of premium spirits brands. A relatively small startup in an industry dominated by multinational corps. So they've really had to develop sophisticated technology capability to kind of give them that point of differentiation and underpin its national liquor distribution business. So you can see up here of all the information they draw in when actually starting to forecast and plan. A very diverse range of internal and external sources. So the BI capabilities within these products allow us to actually use that information, consume it, and allow it to budget, plan more effectively, and use those as real drivers for decisions. So with Spirits Platform, really, it's enabled them to overcome the problem of the distance between them as a distributor and the final end user, the consumer, because between those two are obviously the retailers. So they pull that retail data down, they really kind of use it to get more accuracy in terms of operational effectiveness. So the visibility has allowed the management to develop a kind of deep understanding of where the business is going and the profitability of each brand. Again, a very different story, gives you some nice sort of comparability, but I would say that's the ultimate in driver-based planning. So wins can come in all shapes and sizes and across all sectors, as I said. So here's another example.
Yeah, now, so home loans are a quite well recognised provider in the financial services market in Australia. And look, Jonathan showed earlier in an earlier slide some of the challenges that we have around Excel, and home loans really did hit those challenges and limitations of Excel head on quite abruptly. So they do, you could probably appreciate, they do quite complex loan book modelling with constant, I guess, complex calculations that constantly need analysing of different scenarios. For example, they provide a monthly discounted cash flow rate for the company's $7 billion plus loan books, and the calculations require constant evaluation and re-evaluation. Then, of course, the outcomes of those figures have to be regularly adjusted to take into account changes to margins, run-off rates, settlement values and volumes. And then they forecast these figures out to a period of at least 10 years. So there's a bit of complexity there. And I guess hopefully you'd all agree that to complete all that in Excel was a monumental task. And they really did reach the boundaries of the capability of Excel. And not to mention another major point was the risk around completing these types of calculations and making these types of decisions on products in the Excel environment. So I encourage you to read this case study as well, but if we fast forward now, and they actually now have a secure, robust, repeatable process, and they run their budgets and they forecast, and then they get all their long-term and short-term reporting as well. So some real major wins for the organisation. But the actual individuals that drove this project from the finance side of the organisation have had significant, I guess, personal wins as well. So they've now got more time to do the analysis, and they've got more time to add value to their organisation by actually using the information to offer advice to the different departments and be a leader around that area, rather than spending all their time creating the information in the first place. So that's just been, they've had wins on lots of different levels at home loans.
Yeah, that was a nice example as well. Basically, it was a relatively short, tight time frame, delivered relatively small group of users in this particular case, but a high degree of technical risk around the modelling. Just simplified, very easy for them to maintain on an ongoing basis. And it's been transformational for them. And again, just to add some diversity basically to sort of the stories and give you an idea, basically it's a very sort of flexible technologies. This is Hillbrook Anglican School. Again, they took up the challenge following the event in Brisbane, talked to us. They had an abundance of data in enrolments, class information, financial performance, and they really wanted to start to understand it more and analyse the future outcomes and decisions. So their first project was analysing costs and contributions for each of the subject areas. And again, it just gives you a very neat example. Relatively a smaller organisation compared with the others, different sector, but just as flexible, just as big as win for the business. So now I'll bring it back to the theme. The theme is while you've been waiting. So those are organisations that went and executed. And there's many more. We've just taken a snapshot. We only had half an hour today. And there's many organisations we're working with now. But you know, each year and in constant dialogue with lots of different businesses, I see organisations in, I suppose, desperate need, who repeatedly, in some cases, put off addressing this improvement. I think sometimes it may be because the true cost is seen as normal running overhead. I mean, I have these costs, I've sustained them for a long time, so therefore, you know, I have a team this size and this is what we do. And I think we work within the constraints of the technology provided. So each year, I mean, I was in finance myself as a finance director within industry. I used Excel, this is 25 years ago, and each year I made improvements to it. I refined it, I improved those calculations, I put more checks and balances in. I tried to add some reporting. Each year I tried to make it a little bit better, but I never really fundamentally dealt with the problem. But basically I could have done it a lot better in another technology. Now, we are so lucky to have a very different space now. The flexibility of the tools today are just transformational. Also, I sometimes get the question, okay, well, what about, I just don't have any capacity to do anything. That's another reason often given. Note the time freed up in some of the examples we've given today. Just think about that, those time factors, those time savings. Those organisations are in such a different place. They're executing on new improvements, not just with this technology, but within the Office of Finance. Maybe they're doing some, they're looking at procurements in a different way, or whatever it might be. It just enables the organisation to move from basically the finance team being kind of worked by the system to working the system and able to basically execute and provide the right support for the business. So if you're feeling like this, and a lot of organisations still do, what I would say is let's have a discussion. I just want to contrast you with one business that we met and talked to recently. And again, these events are nice little catalyst moments for organisations to reflect, was the National Gallery of Victoria. Now in their particular case, we help with their business case. So we can do that too. So in their particular case, we helped them put the business case to secure funding, in their particular case from a philanthropic, I can hardly say that, donor. We made the case. The money was received by the organisation. We've executed on that. This has all happened very recently, and I believe they're just about to go live soon with a new exhibition planning and reporting solution we've helped to deliver. So again, if you're struggling developing a business case, talk to us.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. As a result of this session today, if you do want to talk to us, see Jonathan's opened up that invitation to discuss with us, but there's the opportunity to attend the Chris Cato events next month if you haven't already attended an event. And I see we've got one question asking us to send out the details, so Anthony, we will definitely do that for you. But also, there's the opportunity to discuss with Jonathan and I in a 2-hour workshop too. Your, I guess, opportunities for improvement, your current situation. So if you'd like to involve in that process as well, we invite you to do so.
And I've just got a few questions here as well. So we'll just round off the session by having a few of these questions. So we've got a few here. We've got a question here. Could you please send out the details of the sessions for streamlining the budgeting? We will do. Look, they're available on our website, and we will basically send everyone an invite to those sessions. They run very soon. The second question, can it be done on the cloud? Yes. So we can do it on the cloud. There's a variety of different options there. And interestingly enough, by the way, we're not sort of limited to any one approach. It can either be a cloud or an on-premise approach, so we can mix it up with there. And we use Great Plains, and we'll move to the cloud, so crucial the budgeting is in the cloud. Yeah, so yes, just confirmation there. We've got another question here. I thought you were going to demo the product. Okay, so I'm not going to demo the product. Today was very much about the stories and what organisations have done. We constantly run events. We ran a webinar not too long ago on one of the technologies, so we can give you access to all that. But if you want to see more, what I would suggest is follow up this session, and we'd be happy to talk to you about your requirements and then talk back which is the best technology to address that. I've got another question here. We'll be determining factors between choosing, okay, so a question. What were the determining factors between choosing, say, Infor and board? Well, first of all, some of those technologies are aligned to the underlying core finance system. Also, potentially, there are more vertical or process fits. So typically, we'd have a discussion with you about what they are. And so we like to hear your requirements first, and then we talk back which is the best fit. And we'll give you the logical reason for that approach at the time. So we don't come with one tool basically to the party. And that's why I would suggest you always engage us by telling us what you are seeking and what pains you're trying to address, rather than, for instance, us just approaching it with a kind of a one approach. So there's quite a few questions there.
Jonathan, I see there's one more that's just been added. What's the typical time frame? The clients, I'm just sort of reading, what's the typical time frame that these projects or budgeting projects take across, typically across the client base?
Yeah. So the time frames are anywhere between 1 and 3 months. Larger organisations with some change management, and we've got to, sometimes we're taking an organisation from working with spreadsheets basically and dissatisfied sort of budget holders to active participation. Then you've got to actually go at a pace which is right for an organisation. So 3 months is more typical, and that really allows us to really get an effective win. From there, the future improvements are relatively simple because they're now active users of that. And as you sort of build planning approaches and reporting, there's a consistency in that user experience, and that really drives improvement exponentially from that point onwards.
And there's just one other one. How do the companies we've worked with, how do they work out where to start? What's the first problem that they solve if they've got a long list of problems?
We've got a variety of sort of, I suppose, workshopping sort of techniques to kind of help with that. We'll often facilitate a discussion. It doesn't have to be a fully formed workshop. Sometimes a discussion will point us very clearly to where they could gain the most. But we'll definitely have a discussion because we do treat these as kind of platforms for improvement. So understanding the roadmap, the journey, the biggest pain point is important, and different organisations actually start differently. So for Sydney Opera House, it was budgeting for Hillbrook, it was more reporting and analytics, and then a future step was the budgeting. So like I said, it really is pain point driven, opportunity driven, biggest gain driven, and budgeting is often the biggest gain, and it's the first step to, say, rolling forecasts, improved reporting, driver-based planning.
Okay, great. I can't see any more questions. So in terms of registering for our Chris Caton event next month, if you're interested, if you visit our website, which is pa.com.au, and go to events, you'll be able to register there. And in terms of taking us up on the 2-hour workshop, we will email you all out and invite you into that opportunity if you would like.
Great. Okay, well, that wraps it up for today. So thank you, everybody, for spending the time to join us. And like I said, we regularly run events, so maybe Rebecca and I will meet you in the not-too-distant future. Thank you.